All right. So today we're going to be talking about holy sexuality, spiritual. Um, so let me ask you this: like, if God could tell you what your ideal 1122, if God could tell you what your ideal romance and love life looked like and handed it to you, would you be open to that? Would you be willing and ready to receive that? Would you want it? Would you want to see it? Would you want to have it, enjoy it? What if the ideal love life, the ideal romance of your dreams is closer than you think? What if you're almost already there? What if you're just one step away, one word away, one phrase away, one thought away? Well, in today's video, by the end of it, you will be able to identify the 7 signs, the 7 indications that your love life, your sexuality, your romantic life is actually approved by God. So stay tuned to the end so you can find out all those great things. All right. So, um, so basically, what is holy sexuality? And you're gonna have to pardon me. I know that there are a lot of young people that show up in this, and I'm gonna make good by keeping it as clean as possible. Clean. See, there's that judgment, but that's okay. I am gonna keep it as clean as possible, and also keep it as honest as possible. I used to teach college level anatomy and physiology, but that was well over a decade ago. And so I'll use anatomical terms, things like that from time to time, but I'll make sure to keep them veiled enough so that kids aren't looking things up online and exposing themselves to adult content, which is really destructive, unfortunately. It's not actually mature, it's very destructive. Anyway, so how do you match up with God's best for you? These are 7 ways to understand it. But first of all, let's talk about what is holy sexuality. What is apex sexuality? What is the romantic love life, sex life that God approves, opposed to mainstream Christian limitations around it? Because mainstream Christianity tends to put a box around sexuality. A lot of people forget that the first command in the Bible ever made to humanity was be fruitful and multiply. And all the other commandments in the Bible, 640 Deuteronomical, Levitical laws, and then the actual Decalogue, the actual 10 commandments, those are not commandments. Those are observations of how God's children act. But there was one command given to Adam and Eve, and that was be fruitful and multiply. And so the church has, like any human organization, corrupted sexuality. The church has done it, not society, because society is irrelevant. The church is God's emissary in the earth. At least it's supposed to be, it purports to be. But the church, unfortunately, has been corrupted because it's an organization. This is just the nature of organizations. And so there's a difference between mainstream Christianity and its perspective of sexuality and romance, and apex Christianity, God's chosen version of sexuality. Say hi to the folks in the chat real quick. All right. Goatman, hello and welcome. Sorry, my light on my phone is really low. There we go. We can see. All right, Jovi and Jacob, hello and welcome. Abhishek the First, hello, or S1, hello. And hi, Krish Gale Jr., welcome. All right, so today we're talking about if God were to approve your love life, your sex life, your romantic life. And like I said, I know a lot of kids tend to get up in these, so I'm going to be as direct and clear, but also as clean as possible. So, what is a holy sexuality versus a mainstream Christian sexuality? So, first of all, let's talk about what the mainstream Christian and mainstream society says about sexuality. Sexuality or romantic unions are based on moralism. Abstinence is encouraged. It's all about limitation. And if you think back to the Bible, it talks about leaving the land of Egypt. The word Egypt in the ancient text is misir, which means limitation, restriction. And the church is all about restricting your sexuality, and society is too, to a great extent. Now, that doesn't mean you just go out willy-nilly and do whatever you want to anybody that you want. No, you don't do that. So let's talk about apex sexuality, the sexuality that God approves, that God actually condones. It's based on liberty, on clarity, on creativity, and on pleasure. And so we're going to get right into the 7 traits that if you are doing these things in a relationship, and look, I know there are kids in the thing, so uh, still, this applies pretty much to all relationships. It doesn't have to just be romantic relationships or a love life. All right. And we call it love life, but I don't know why we do that. It's a sex life. Okay. But I'm using love life for YouTube's algorithm, whatever. All right. So 7 traits are number 1. Let's say hi to the folks in the chat. There's a lot of activity going on here. Okay. So hello, Abhishek. Thank you. They said hi, sir. Very good. All right. And Pankaj, edit 77. Okay. No, I don't know Krish Gale. No. Okay. Jovi and Jacob said hi. Hello. Thank you for saying hi. Dimitri V. I think um oh, Chris Gay L. I don't know. I don't know who that is. All right. And then let's see. We'll just do. And there we go. Did we get rid of that person? Yay, we did. Okay. Let's get right into it. So, first and foremost, the first trait of a romantic life, a love life that God approves, is that it's mature. It's a mature connection, and I'm talking about sex here, so I'm just going to say it. It has to be mature. That means that it is between 2 mature individuals, 2 adults. All right. Now, what we know about sexual desire in the human being is that humans, healthy humans, tend to desire partners that exhibit the qualities of maturity, not of decrepit age, but of maturity. So that means that with females, typical males want females with developed breasts because that's a sign of maturity, anatomical maturity, meaning large enough breast, right? Females tend to want males that have muscular bodies. That is a sign of maturity. They're not little skinny boys, they are muscular, capable, mature men. All right. So the human, God has already designed us to pursue and to desire signs of maturity. So if your sex life is showing signs of maturity, meaning your partner and you are mature people, you're not children, then it is something approved by God. The second thing is that it is consensual. All right. Consensual means all parties have the ability mentally and emotionally and spiritually to make a decision to engage in that relationship. And so, if it's consensual, that means all parties involved are consenting to this. They're not being coerced into it. They're not being guilt tripped into it. They're not being like some guys will guilt trip women into a sexual relationship. Some women will guilt trip men into a romantic union that's long term. Like a girl will say, "Oh, we've had sex, and so we're in a relationship now." A man does not have to consent to that. He can say, "You know, we decided to have consensual sex, and I don't want to continue in a relationship with you. I've realized that I don't want you in that way in my life." And he is free, and he is approved by God to move on from that interaction and never deal with her again. Okay, that's consensual. Same thing with women. If a man says, "Well, I bought you dinner and now we're supposed to kiss and make out and do all these sexual things," well, she's completely within her right, according to God, according to the Bible, according to spirituality, to walk away from this. Say, look, you chose by consent to purchase dinner without the promise of sexual interaction, and I can walk away whenever I want. And so we have to understand that the second trait of a God approved sexual union is that it's consensual. Both people involved are choosing, not both people, it can be more than 2 people, believe it or not, are choosing to be involved. Okay. All right. And then the third trait is that it is harmonious. It's harmonious. That means it's in flow. It is matched. You are aligned with the person or persons that you are encountering or interacting with in a romantic, sexual way. And so it's harmony, there's flow there. Now, if it's contentious, there's constant fighting, there's constant battling, there's constant drama. That's not approved by God. God does not approve those sorts of sexual unions. Now, again, when I say approve, what I mean is God, that's not what God's highest is for his children. A disharmonious union will exist, God will permit it, but the idea is not that God is sitting there saying, that is a positive, pleasant, wonderful thing. Obviously, it is not. Okay. The fourth thing is that the fourth trait of a God approved sexual union is that it is pleasurable. That means it is enjoyed 90% of the time. See, 90% or more. Now, 85%, that's a working relationship. That's a relationship that requires a lot of work, or 85% or less. But 90% or more of pleasure in that relationship, I mean, you guys enjoy each other's time, you enjoy each other's company, you laugh together, you have shared pleasurable interests. That is something that's approved of by God. Also, in the bedroom, if it is enjoyable in the bedroom, 90% of the time, that's approved by God. There are times when women will develop certain medical conditions that will cause the sex life, romance life to kind of dwindle and go down and be unenjoyable. And if that occurs, then there probably needs to be a reevaluation of the value of that relationship, because bodily expressions are spiritual. um See, bodily concerns or bodily that come up are actually spiritual expressions. Sure. Spiritual expressions. So if a woman has like something like vaginismus, or a tumor grow, or myomas, or some sort of something like that, or anyway, various issues that are related to feminine health, then there's a spiritual correlate to that. And it's possible that the relationship is exacerbating that issue and causing the problem. It's possible, like men with ED, erectile dysfunction, that could be a spiritual problem manifesting as a physical ailment. So that means that time has to be taken to take some searching, do some inner searching, talk with God, talk with a therapist, talk with people that can help you, and then get that addressed and see if that impacts the relationship. But most of the time, those sorts of things are just an indication that God probably is not 100% approving it, or is encouraging you to move on and do something else, see someone else, get into another relationship, or build a better relationship with yourself and with Him. All right, number 5, the fifth trait of a God-approved sexual union is that it is divine. And that means that the connection that you have with your partners is connecting you to the transcendent. It is connecting you to the source of life, the substrate of reality itself. It's something that brings you beyond this physical world into the presence of God. And I can tell you, I've had powerful sexual experiences that have taken me to places where I felt the presence of God. Now, this was not something that I experienced in my last long-term relationship, the last 17 years ever, but maybe once or twice. But it was something I experienced with other individuals. And so what that looks like is different for every person, but a divine connection is something that you will experience in the sexual union, in the romantic union. And I'm saying sexual because that's what we're talking about here. All right. And then number 6, the sixth trait of a God approved sexual union, romantic relationship, love life, is that it is based on liberty. And that goes back to number 1, consent. A consensual, or number 2, consent. A consensual sexual relationship means that I have the freedom to engage in this and also to disconnect from it. Now, women will use guilt, shame, and fear. Men will use guilt, shame, and fear, sometimes physical coercion. These things are absolutely wrong, and they're not approved by God in the sense of that's not God's highest. So it's not an apex sexual union and not an apex Christian union. But liberty is a definite sign. That means that the relationship is pure. Now, you cannot have liberty if you're with someone who's underage. You cannot have liberty in a relationship because of the disparity in life experience and clarity. You cannot have a God-approved, liberated sexual union with someone who is mentally incapable, right? So I have interacted with women that just were not on my intellectual level, and I would never have sex with them. Fortunately for me, I'm a sapiosexual, so if a woman, her numbers are way too below, different from mine, I'll say different, I lose sexual desire and arousal for her, like, immediately. So fortunately, those things can happen. Again, being an intellectual doesn't make you like more aligned or anything like that. No, it doesn't. That's just what God has for me. Okay. Now there are people that are just very easygoing and they don't need like a bunch of philosophical, intellectual stuff going on, and I totally get that, and that's a beautiful thing, and it's actually approved by God. But it's just about alignment. So anyway, liberty is what I'm talking about here. There's no coercion. You have the freedom to come and to go, and it's an uplifting relationship. Okay, and then finally, Number 7, it goes back to the first command God ever gave humanity, which is be fruitful and multiply. A God-approved sexual union is productive. Productive. Now, look, you guys can be in a sexual union, and there are no children created from that. That's totally fine. You may be creating a business together. That is a child that is born of a sexual union. You are the male, she's the female, meaning, or whatever. You're masculine, she's feminine, or he's masculine, or feminine, whatever. What I'm saying is, these are two parts that fit together. And it's not just in the sexual union, anatomically in our bodies. Sometimes in homosexual unions, you have a masculine and a feminine partner. Those unions can create great things. God approves of that, okay? Believe it or not. Again, this is an apex Christian perspective, not mainstream. Children are not always the product of a union. Sometimes it is a business. Sometimes it is a solution. Sometimes it's a technology. Sometimes it's a garden, a farming operation, a new clothing line or something, whatever. There are things that are, what I'm saying is productive. One of the things that I found with one of the partners I was with is that after being with her, I felt extremely creative. So I felt like I could run a million miles. I could build a house. I could write music. And I actually did those things. I didn't run a million miles or build a house, but I did write songs. And I had far more creativity and clarity as a result of our sexual union. And so that's the 7th thing. All right. So these are objective observations. And I'll go over them real quickly. And that is the 7 traits of a God-approved sexual union is that it is mature, it is consensual, it is harmonious, it is pleasurable, it is divine, it is liberated and pure, and it is productive. Now, these are objective observations about apex Christian spiritual sexual unions. This is not a moralistic statement. If you're a mainstream Christian, which I can see most people were because they left, um, then you're going to want to be abstinent. You're going to want to be heterosexual. You're going to want to be all the mainstream Christian stuff because that aligns with what God has for you. But an objective observation of an apex union is the union of a chosen one, the union of a most high God, child of the most high God, to a child of the most high God. That does not mean you're going to be together forever. That does not mean you're going to be, married for 50 years, 73 years. That's not what it means. What it does mean, though, is that you are choosing what works for you, and the relationship that you're having is improving the overall experience of the human story. Now, you don't need to be apex in order to um, have a God-approved sexual union. You don't have to be apex, like I just said. But this is just a question of what do you prefer? What do you prefer in your sexual unions? And so, anyway, listen, God is liberty, God is love, God is life, not restriction and fear. And in the story of Moses and the children of Israel, they were leaving Egypt. Again, this is an esoteric perspective. You just have to read the Bible and understand the deeper symbolism, which is not hard to find. You can just do Bible Hub and you find it. God called the children out of Egypt. The word Egypt is not Egypt in the Bible. It's actually Misr. M-I-S-R if you're using the English Latin letters. Misr. Okay? Misr is the word in the ancient Semitic language means restriction. It means slavery. It means like to be bound up, to be stuck between two things that you can't move. And so that's really what that word means. And so the church has used restriction, and God is calling his chosen out of that restriction into creativity, into liberty, and into a life that actually works. So that's what I have to say about that. Thank you for watching. Stay Apex.